I posted an article on Medium about the recent decision by the International Chess Federation to keep the women's category female only, and within 2 days it was removed for hate speech. Whenever one researches anything regarding trans topics, you tend to only find a few results, either a rabid defense or a conservative attack. Both are biased, however, only one is viewed as such, and which one that is changes from the perspective of the viewer. Due to the authority of organizations like Stonewall, Mermaids, and WPATH, the recommendations on how to address and treat LGBT topics is often treated as the only empathetic way to do so. The voices of those within the LGBT community who dissent with their methods are ignored and treated as outliers, or worse, as bad actors.
I will no longer call a person queer if I don't see them participating in queer politic. You're gay, sure, you're gay. That is not the same as queer. If you haven't put a mask on in a week, not queer. You're just not queer.
Well, thank you for finally saying the quiet part out loud. Queer has nothing to do with sexual orientation. It represents a very specific set of politics. Specifically liberal politics. It's the politics of the Democratic Party. It's the politics of the CIA and every major multinational corporation. It's the politics of liberalism and the status quo left. When's the last time you met a non-binary Republican? You won't, because it's just a fake label that describes a specific set of politics. If these labels represented real phenomenon, you would see them all across the political spectrum. Also, if your politics won't ruffle the feathers at a coastal liberal dinner party, they're not radical politics. If Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton and the architects of the Iraq War agree with your sexual politics, they're not radical sexual politics.
As a result, the guidelines for writing about or writing policy for the so-called queer community are biased against anyone who disagrees with them, turning criticism into automatic hate speech. Because social media, especially English-speaking social media, is primarily based in the West, a loud but vocal minority is able to sway platforms like Medium, YouTube, and Twitter into deplatforming critics, all under the guise of progressivism. Of course, these same platforms are hesitant to shut down misogynists, of both the begendered and conservative flavors, because their views are more widely held, more profitable, and don't rock the boat as radical feminism seeks to do. Radical feminism is forced into political homelessness or into a surface-level alignment with the right in order to garner any platform. While the left argues that critical thought, logic, and rationalism are signs of bigotry and simultaneously claims to be the progressive party on the right side of history, liberals are now holding more in common with the Christian fundamentalist conservatives they claim to hate than do the radical feminists and gay activists they seek to silence. These include homophobia. Gay people who are not attracted to people who identify as the same gender are homophobic. Same-sex attraction is transphobic. Homosexuals are genital fetishists, versus homosexuality is a sin, and same-sex attraction is deviant.
Yes, genital preferences are always transphobic. You're welcome. No, but seriously, deciding that you don't want to be intimate with someone because of the genitals they have is transphobic, particularly like if you think about, in this case, this means that this person is not open to dating trans women, which invalidates their womanhood. Not only that, it makes assumptions about the way that trans people are going to want to use those genitals. The idea that trans people use the body parts that they have in the same way that cis people with those same body parts do is transphobic. Say it with me. Genital preferences are always transphobic.
Exclusion of and looking down upon those who disagree. TERF, block and stay safe. Too bad a TERF said that. It made sense, but interacting with TERFs is dangerous. Versus hate the sin, not the sinner. Rigid gender roles. Femininity is the same as being female, and masculinity is the same as being male. If you identify with masculinity or femininity and it doesn't match your sex, you should transition to the matching gender. Butch women really are closeted trans men. versus women must be feminine because the Lord says so. Femininity includes inherent submissiveness to and prioritization to men. Self-centrism. My pronouns and gender need to be validated and respected by you, and if you don't, you are oppressing me, are bigoted, or need to be educated. Versus, my religion needs to be respected and centered by you, and if you don't, you are oppressing me and need to be educated.
Using multiple pronouns.
My pronouns is she, her.
And mine are they, she, but today I prefer she.
Prefer? I thought preferred pronouns were outdated.
Well, respecting someone's pronouns is not a matter of preference, but you can use preferred pronouns when referring to someone who uses multiple pronouns and has a preference as to when each one is used.
This person just came into the bar and said, hey, what are your pronouns? You kind of look like a they, them. And I hated that they were right.
What you want? What you want? Say wrong pronoun bad. Say correct pronoun bad. What? What you want? You come for
And hatred of rationality. Biology doesn't matter. Gender is a feeling, not a science. Gendered souls exist and take precedence. Versus, biology doesn't matter. The Bible tells us how the world has been created and how it should run. Cognitive dissonance refers to when a person holds conflicting beliefs without recognizing their hypocrisy. One major one that I've run into quite often with men is prostitution. It's perfectly fine for them to suggest a woman down on her luck use her body for money, or to try OnlyFans, and often they even complain that women have it easy for having that option to make money. However, if you suggest they can do the same, they get immensely offended. If it's degrading to a man, it is degrading for women to do also. You're simply used to women being degraded.
Something that absolutely makes my blood boil is when men say things like, oh, if I was a woman, I would never have to pay for anything. If I was a woman, I would sleep my way to success, and I would just use my body to get whatever I wanted. I could be so famous online. You could just post pictures of yourself in underwear, and you can make a ton of money. I would have an OnlyFans XYZ. And I'm like, you could do that now as a man. You know, there are men that are willing to pay for you as well. There's nothing stopping you as a man from engaging in this quid pro quo kind of behavior. But men will say, oh, it's not the same. Like, you don't understand. Like, if you're a girl, it's different. Why is it different for women to trade their body for success, to trade their body for material items? Because women are inherently less in value, because women should have less self-esteem, self-respect, understand their place as a commodity to be bought and sold. But you as a man, you can't even fathom the idea of doing that. So you have to say, oh, if I was a woman, I would do this. No, you wouldn't, because you're not doing it now. Oh, it's not the same thing. I'm not gay. I can't do that. It's not the same. Yes, it is. Are we thinking that the women that are doing this quid pro quo relationships are having sex with like Jensen Ackles and Chris Hemsworth? Is that what we're thinking? Because that's not the case. They're not attracted to these men, just like you would not be attracted to those same men. But for women, what, you're expected to just sleep with men you're not attracted to? Like, for some reason that's okay for women to do, but for you, you can't fathom that? Why? Why are you assuming that if you were female, you would have less integrity and not value merit and work? Ridiculous.
Quite simply, just like Christianity shapes much of Western life, from the holidays people get time off for to the laws we uphold, gender ideology is also a form of dominant culture in that it is able to control and shape law, culture, and even personal expression, regardless of the cognitive dissonance involved. There are people who do not worship at the altar of gender or at the church of fundamentalism who object to the medicalization of gender nonconformity. But if only conservative platforms are willing to discuss or host criticism, then when seeing critics of gender ideology, it will appear as if it only stems from conservative voices. For some, this isn't a problem, as it is possible to agree with people on certain issues and disagree on others.
This is what happens whenever you ask a transgender activist to explain even the basic premise of the movement, is they'll immediately say, well, who cares? Why are you so obsessed with this? I'm not obsessed with this. I'm not the one who started sending men into the women's bathroom and taking away their trophies and castrating kids. I'm perfectly happy with the way things have worked for thousands of years. It is the transgender activists who are trying to upend everything. And so I think it is at least my right to ask the question, okay, what is the premise of your movement? But they always deflect from that. They always withdraw from the debate. They always try to change the subject because there is no answer. So you ask me, well, what's the purpose of, why do you even care? What's the purpose of knowing someone's biological sex? Well, for starters, because we have civil rights specifically for women in the United States. We have special bathrooms for women. We have special sports leagues for women. We have all sorts of special places and rights and privileges and that are for women that are not for men. So if now some men, people who at the very least appear to be men, are claiming a right to go into those women's bathrooms, then we either have to abolish all of the special rights and privileges that have existed for women for all of human history and are enshrined in our law, or they need to explain to me how those men are actually women. And they can't do the latter, and I'm not willing to do the former, and I don't think women across this country are willing to do the former, even if a few people have been so ideologically blinded that they would give in to this kind of an absurdity.
But for many, politics are viewed less as a subject of nuance and more like sports teams. There exists us and them, and there must be no overlap between them, even though there is truly little difference between the two parties. This refusal to seek middle ground only further widens the perceived gap between them and makes it more difficult to seek resolutions that may appeal to a wider moderate middle ground. It fosters a flattened view of opposition, taking the individual out of the political party and painting the whole as a monolith. We are not a monolith. Radical feminists oppose gender ideology for the erosion to women's rights and safety, while conservatives dislike the challenge to a long-standing cultural expression of gender values. It's easy to see the difference when you compare speakers like Matt Walsh or Posey Parker with radical feminists like Kara Dansky, because while some things may be held in common, there are far more complexities than just us versus them or good versus bad. Life is more complicated than that, and it shouldn't be so difficult to express those nuances as mainstream media is making it. This, dear viewers, is where we part. I still have the Medium account up, but I think I'll be switching to Substack. I had some difficulties setting it up. I think it's because I'm in Cambodia and they think I'm using a VPN. But more or less, it took less than 2 days for an article about chess, which basically just said that it's a good thing that women continue to have their own category, provided studies. You are aware of how my videos work. It was essentially a video script just posted on there. Within 2 days, hate speech. If you continue to do this, you'll be banned off the platform. And when it comes to finding any kind of coverage on this, the first search result goes on and on about how this is horrible. The BBC is using emotion-based arguments of how this is going to cause suicide, this is going to be so horrible, the chess players are so hurt. And it's very difficult for anyone who is rational and liberal to find something that's rational and liberal that is a critic of the same issue. While you can find a diverse range of opinions on the topic, they seem to fall only under conservative or liberal and rabid on either side of the equation. There's no room for someone who is a feminist who disagrees with gender ideology, just as there's no room for a moderate in modern Western, specifically American politics. This radicalization makes it even harder for people to get along because we don't have any progress being made. Power bounces from party to party, and we have no real motivation to reach out and form middle grounds. It will always end up being polarized to the extreme amount, and that's part of why the US is going downhill so hard. If you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.